Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here for another video on Marvel Strike Force. And sorry that I'm trying not to laugh here because I'm just looking at this Incursion raid map and I just can't help but just kind of laugh a little bit. Or it's just such a mess. I have to zoom all the way out to see everything, and there you are. We just started 8 hours ago and I am done 2 lanes. We're here to talk about in this video about how I'm doing in an Incursion raid and what I recommend for people going forward, because I think there's been a good couple of days now where people have had a good chance to, do this, I don't know, 3 or 4 days worth of Incursion raids now, and sort of people are, I wouldn't say officially landed where they're going to be, but I have a good idea of what works, what doesn't, and what we got to think about when it comes to these individual 5 origin teams that we're using for Incursion Raid, and whether or not some of them in particular are worth building for you. Now, this video is not going to be aimed, if you want to stick around too, but it's not going to be aimed for the people who are in the top 0.5%, aka those top 100 alliances. Probably this isn't for you, but this is going to be for more of your average player who's kind of starting an Incursion raid and is thinking about whether or not they need to upgrade teams like the Bionic Avengers, and also perhaps some of the characters in the Mystic section as well. And I want to go over this a little bit. So if you're ready to go, everybody, then let's boil this down. And so we're going to start here in the roster section of the game. And so what's working? And if you saw in the intro, I have been able now, I'm in Incursion Raid difficulty 2. I think we messed up by 1% or a couple percent into getting into D3. So we're kind of working on that right now. I'm not going to sit here and talk about the rewards. I've already done that what was it, Wednesday or Thursday? I already did that video. And so this is here to talk about the individual teams in each of the 5 sections and what's worth using, what's worth upgrading, and what's not. So I kind of want to just run this systematically because, that's the easiest thing to do. And I think that they designed this in a good way that basically the first lanes are easier and then it kind of gets progressively harder as you go along. So we have to talk about Death Seed. And, my apologies if the lanes actually go the other way. I didn't check every single lane. Maybe I'm an idiot. But at least where I'm running, it goes Mutant, Bio, Skill, Mystic, Tech. Does it go that way for all the lanes? I'm not sure. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments down below. I didn't ask my alliance. I just, I could easily just go and check the map. But regardless, this is the lane direction that I run. And I'm glad that it's set up this way because this is the easiest. Currently on difficulty 2, this is the 3rd difficulty so far, that I've not had any troubles using my sim button. That's great, because largely while we thought that this may actually punish Death Seed, it doesn't. And so Death Seed is a very strong team that is very viable in this raid, which is great, at least in Incursion Raid 1. Now, we don't know down the line for Incursion Raid 2 or what have you, but nonetheless, right now, this is a very good team that you can upgrade, which means it's safe to build, that you can do this. You can bring them to gear tier 16. I don't know if you necessarily need to go higher than this. That really depends on you if you're going to go into Big Apocalypse. We're not here to talk about that, though. That's a completely different conversation, which I'm not having in this video. But nonetheless, I said that a lot too. You should get them all to at least gear tier 16, level 90. Now, because this is doing good enough for me here, I'm not sure about D3, D4, D5, but this is working. I've never failed a sim in any of the difficulties. There's been no RNG fest as far as I'm aware, so it's fine. But I would go to probably about this. Maybe you could get away with less. Let me know as well. Maybe you can do it with a lower power. But you need them to gear tier 16 anyways for a baby apocalypse. So at the very least, you probably want to do this. Now, Archangel's G17, I don't know. I guess it's not a big deal anyways. But yeah, this is fine. And I'm really happy about that. So let's move on. There's not much else to say about Death Seed in the Mutant lane. It's pretty easy. Let's talk about the second lane. So let's talk about Rebirth, because that's really what it's all about. Rebirth is the only team on the block for Bio because they've essentially neutered Web Warriors in their little scourges that we're using now in the raids. And so Rebirth is the team. I wish my dog would stop licking my leg because that's what he's doing right now while I'm trying to film a video. So I get distracted, that's why. But this is how my Rebirth team is. Now, I've had a little bit of bad RNG at... Loki, stop licking my leg, please. Okay, you need to go to bed. Okay, go lie down. All right, thank you. Yeah, you can hear him shaking. Okay. Stop. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. So this is my Rebirth theme. My legs are like over him. This is my Rebirth theme, all right? And I did have like one mess up, I think, over the last 4 days in terms of my Incursion raid, and that's about it. So I don't know. I mean, I could manual play it, but I don't want to. So I guess maybe I need to build these up a little bit higher in order to negate that kind of bad RNG. Now, I really hate US Agent. I feel disgusted that I even took him to gear tier 16. It's just that, like, he's not a very good character, in my opinion, but he kind of has to be there. He's like, he's that guy. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't even want to put any more T4s in him. I might take him to level 90, but I don't even want to do that, to be honest. So if I'm going to upgrade anyone, I took Captain America to 95. I think I would probably take Agent Venom up a little bit further, maybe to 95, and then Captain Carter to 95, and see how that goes. With my RNG on my simming for Incursion raid. Other than that, I don't know if I need to do it with Winter Soldier or not. Let me know how you guys are faring in yours. This is a pretty big team. Like, I'm 1.05 million, I think, something like that around there. A lot of it is coming from Cap. At this time, I don't think there's anyone that I want to take to gear tier 17. I think I'm just holding the line at gear tier 16 for the moment. But I may blue ISO for them. Because down the line, it seems that when we get to, is it D4, that you actually need your raid teams at Blue ISO 4. And I just want to check that very quickly as well, because that is a thing. I noticed that in the different difficulties that in order to get access to them once you do get there, it is difficulty 4. So a lot of us are probably going to land in difficulty 3 and stop there, because until you're able to bring all of your raid teams up to Blue ISO 4, which, a lot of people are still focusing on things like Apocalypse, that's not going to be really much of a thing, is it? So I don't know. That might be the next thing I might do in order to raise their power levels up to maybe make things a little bit easier. But nonetheless, Rebirth simming is for the most part pretty easy, and I'm having a decent time on that. Now, Invaders. I do want to talk about this one specifically. Now, I'm not there yet on this, and it will be the next node for me, actually, in fact. Do not, and I don't recommend this, do not sim on skill node 1. Now, why is this a problem for my simming? Now, if you guys watched my other video, my first time that I did the Incursion raid, I failed this. I think I lost like 2 or 3 of my characters. And the reason for this, I think, is because of the Ghost Rider on this node. I think that it just sims really weird, and maybe my character's getting bapped in the face by Ghost Rider when I'm killing other players. That's the only thing I can think of. Nemesis' ultimate with the slow, that's a bit of a pain in the ass as well. They have high damage, and this is kind of consistent with some of the like difficulty 8 in the Nova Scourge, for example. The enemies actually have a very high damage stat. They do have a high health stat as well, but their damage stat is also high, so whenever you take a hit, you actually do end up taking a lot of damage. And for Ghost Rider, I think that's probably how I'm dying. So every time I've been doing this, I've been manualing node number 1 on the skill lane, but I have been simming 2 in the boss node, and I haven't had a problem with that. For whatever reason, the enemy combinations on this is not that difficult, and I've not had a hard time, but I have on the first node. So anyone who's doing this, I don't really recommend simming it. And I want to go over my Invaders in terms of, what I have right now. They're big. I'm not going to lie. My Invaders are big. Probably bigger than they need to be. And probably bigger than what you might have, maybe. And I have a huge Nick Fury. Gear tier 17, 7 yellow, 7 red. I got this very early on as soon as he had his rework. His minions were insane. That's when I 7-redded him. I got that upgrade for him. He was already at 6, but then I got that 7. And I don't regret that one bit. So if you're going to focus on anyone in this team, it's going to be Nick Fury. I think it's going to be the best bang for your buck. Second character that I would upgrade is Bucky. I'm probably going to get that 95 there very soon. I am very low on gold, and that's something else to talk about soon, is that there's just, you need to think about where your focus on your gold is going to be. And we're going to talk about what that's not going to be pretty soon here. But yeah, this is what I have right now. Without a doubt, this is probably good good for like D3. Just make sure that you're manualing that first node, because I think that's not going to be very good in your favor, at least for the sim, because I've had really bad luck with that so far. Maybe it's just RNG. Let me know in the comments down below what it's been like for you for that particular node, if you've been simming it, but I do recommend manual for that one. The other characters, Union Jack, I'm not a big fan of Union Jack, so he's like the Agent Venom. Like for me, I don't know why. And I think the more important characters here are actually Cap and Iron Fist in the middle range of the team. But Gear Tier 16 for sure for all of them, and just like for Rebirth, I'm going to have to consider Blue 4 probably on the rest of them so that I can actually use them. And going forward, whether that's Incursion Raid 2 or whatever, maybe a bare minimum entry requirement is going to be Blue 4 going forward, so that's something that we're going to have to do. Now, moving on to Mystic. This is where things get, because there's no team, right? And this is where things get interesting. I'll tell you who I'm not using. This guy. Because the Scourges that they have on those lanes are a direct FU to Dormammu, and using him, I tried it one time just for shits and giggles, and I got wrecked. I lost my entire team, and I had to stop there. So don't do that. But the characters that I am using, Morgan Le Fay, Spider-Weaver, Icarus, Cersei, and Deathpool. So Deathpool standalone, she has this part, obviously, for the energy. And the speed bar, frankly, as well. But really, it's the where the hell is the energy stuff here? Yeah, on enemy death, generate 1 ability energy for 2 random Mystic or New Warrior allies. You're not using the war. Don't use the rest of the New Warriors in this. It's not happening. Don't use Cloak and Dagger. That's not happening. So the way that this is, you know what? Maybe I might actually get this. I don't know why I didn't have it. Let's buy that. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't have that one. It's been a long time. Yeah, I should have got that. Anyways, don't use Cloak and Dagger on this section, because they're absolutely going to get wrecked by the Scourges that are basically something that I forget now. It's stuff to do with blind and lots of the other debuffs that they chuck out that they can't do. Now, what has happened for me is that I've been fine on the manual. The simming is... It's a bit weird. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't, at least for me on difficulty 2. So I don't personally recommend it. I think that there's at some point going to be a Mystic team. But the weird thing is that the characters that you're using, or that I think you're using, or maybe you're using something else, the ones that I'm using are very meta characters elsewhere in the game. Morgan Le Fay, the Eternals, Spider-Weaver, Deathpool to some extent, you know, probably the least meta, I guess, of the team, but you do need Gear Tier 16 for Apocalypse, so there's that. But I don't really want to put more investment into Deathpool. So in order to make this a little bit easier on me, what am I going to do? Well, Cersei and Icarus are already 95. Actually, Spider-Weaver's 95. Morgan Le Fay's 95. So there's really not much more I can do with my investment for these characters, and just struggle along as I go through. Now, when I get to the boss node for the Incursion raid, what ends up happening is that I usually can't one-tap it. I don't know why. It's a bit of a struggle. They have a lot of hit points. The Kang has a crap ton of hit points, and I usually end up 2-tapping it. Now, what ends up happening is I normally quit, hopefully before Morgan Le Fay dies, and then I bring in the full Darkhold team to just finish it off. Now, of course, I could wait for someone in my alliance to clear it up, but if I'm too impatient to do that, that's normally what I end up doing. And unfortunately, I'm ignoring a lot of these other characters here that maybe some people are using Doom, but, you know, there's not really a lot of high-end meta characters in the Mystic section that you can viably use, especially if you're, I would say, an endgame player, but not super Kraken-y. You know, your roster's probably going to look somewhat similar to mine in terms of Mystic characters if you've been keeping up with the game. So there's really not much more to say here, but yeah, I don't know where I can maybe put in more investment into these characters. Maybe Blue ISO 4, because I'm going to need to do that anyways. I do have Blue ISO 4 for Morgan on Skirmisher, just not on the Striker, so I don't know, maybe I'll also give it to the Striker ISO. But so many Striker characters that I'm actually running with the Mystic in the Mystic team, so that's a bit of a problem there. And last but not least, Bionic Avengers. We have to talk about this, right? We have to. So they've basically shit-kicked this entire team for the most part. Now, you could run Kang in place of Iron Man, but this is not fun. I tried it once, literally, and I just said fuck it after that. My apologies. I almost managed to go a whole video without swearing, but my Bionic Avengers are pretty big. They're well over 1 million, and I'm having troubles. Yeah. So what this means is, if you're nowhere near where I'm at, don't even build these guys. Do not touch the Bionic Avengers with a 10-foot pole. Was that the right phrase? Anyways, don't build them, because you're just going to waste your resources. Where are you using Bionic Avengers outside of the raids? Nowhere, really. They can beat Web Warriors in like War and Crucible, but other than that, like, there's not a huge amount of space for them right now. And if you haven't already done it, don't do it. And if you're thinking about whether or not to upgrade these characters, don't do that either. Because I'm at the point now where, like, any more investment to level 95 with gold that I don't have, you know, I'm sitting at 4 million gold, which is what, again, I don't even know, not even one character to 95. Don't do it. You know, this is, if I wanted to take all these characters up to 95, it would be an extra 20 million gold plus whatever this costs to get Iron Man to gear 16. Like, I'm just not doing it. Like, there is going to be, for sure, in fact, could be the next team around the corner. I'm going to be saving my gold for that. And because the biggest problem right now is that they just don't function well. And it doesn't matter, though. You don't need them. That's the great part about it, I guess, because they're last in the Incursion raid. So in terms of the laning, at least on my side anyways, it goes to skill, it goes to mystic, and then it goes down to tech. Now, the great thing is that you don't need to 100% clear this raid to get a reasonable distance in the difficulties. You know, like, in order to get to the higher ones, you don't need to do 100%, and that's great. You know, so I don't recommend anyone to build this. You know, whether it's for Incursion raid or even if it's for Doom raid, don't build them because you don't need to. You don't need them. Just get that out of your mind. You don't need Bionic Avengers. If you've already built them, don't take them up any higher. If you haven't built them yet, for the love of God, don't do it. And a lot of this has to do with what I used to say about Astonishing X-Men and Axemen, and how that was in relation to the upcoming Death Seed. You know, like, people felt that they needed to upgrade Axemen even though that they were, like, really, really old and that they were really crap in the current raid. Don't do it. Just whatever you do. And if anyone forces you into building Bionic Avengers, despite them going out the door pretty soon, then that alliance leader needs to take a bit of a think about what he's asking people to do. And so this is only going to, you know, apply to people who are in that top 0.5%. Like I said, maybe those top 50 alliances who are pushing that 100%. But for everyone else, do not do it. Otherwise, it's just horrible advice, and people are trying to get you to waste your resources on things that you don't need to do. Mystic is just in a real awkward spot. I think that we can make do with the characters that we have at our disposal. It's not necessarily fun, but, you know, we'll hobble along until after tech gets solved, unless they happen to give us a Mystic team before tech team. I mean, I guess that would make sense, because in the direction, right? Like, this is kind of where we're at. Like, we have these 3 other teams, but we don't necessarily have a full team for Mystic anymore. So who knows? Maybe they'll chuck a Mystic team at us before the tech team. And actually, I wouldn't mind that, because, you know, it's in the direction I'm traveling down the map, and so that would make a little bit more sense to me. Like, I don't care if I can't clear these nodes. It doesn't really bother me. But I'm really glad to know that the other 3 teams do work. And, you know, how much investment that you need to put in yourself really is going to depend on how far you plan on going. So for me, like I said, I'm going to put in a little bit more investment into my bio characters, my Rebirth, a little bit more, just to see if I can just alleviate that sort of RNG that happens occasionally for me. But other than that, I think I'm pretty okay. So if you get your characters to about level 90, gear tier 16, for at least the other 3 main teams, I think that's more than sufficient for this raid so far from what I've seen. And that's really great, because, you know what? That means I don't actually need to play it for the most part. The only node that I am playing is that node that I was talking to you about. That skill node number 1. This one's the only node that I manual. Other than that, we go back to Marvel's SimForce, because that's how the game works. And honestly, I think they've designed the raid teams in mind for this to happen, especially teams that have ability energy and things like that. They don't actually want us to play this game. They just wanted to sim everything, because really there's so much things in the game that take up our screen time that we just don't really have the time to be able to manual play everything. At least if you don't want to pull your hair out. So that's the end of this video. Let me know if this helped down below. If you have any concerns, let me know that as well. And of course, until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.